Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're doing an in-depth review of SIF Transcended with her new Asgard Invasion uniform. So watch this video if you want to know how much better SIF is now, if she's worth your investment, the uniform and the Transcendence for the leadership slash support, and then also if, and what game modes, if she's good for other game modes, and what other game modes she's good as a main DPS character, as a character that you're going to be dealing the majority of the damage with. So my build right now for SIF is very, very high. It's rank 74. I've taken her into a couple of different game modes and gotten a feel for how she plays. And I want to, recap the build for you, give you some of my expectations after having, some time to play with her, give you some build suggestions, and then give you like a final grade, final summary of the character. So we do actually have 4 Odin's Blessings with a bunch of 5-star, well, 6-star and then middling 5-star Uru. She doesn't need the crit rate there. She's actually over capped on basically, the important stuff, or she's at the cap for all of the important stats, including movement speed, because of her uniform's all speed buff. So it's really nice. Because of the all speed buff on her uniform passive, if you want to get the absolute most mileage out of her build, you will want to go with Overdrive for the ISO 8 set. But I say that knowing that some people spend 10-20 million gold looking for an ISO 8 set, so don't do that. Settle for Hawkeye, settle for Power of Angry Hulk. It's really not going to be the difference. It's not going to be like night and day for your SIF. I'm just saying for those of you that want to absolutely maximize every last bit, if you're really into min-maxing. The rest of the buffs on the uniform, of course, are the increased damage dealt to boss types, which you're basically only going to see reflected in PvE content. So don't expect her to be viable for any PvP content. She does have a heal, but besides that, there's really nothing much to talk about there. As far as the skills that you want to queue up in specific orders, you basically almost always want to start with 3. She has a long 8 seconds worth of accumulation, and it's damage dealt. So you can either press 3 and let it play out. It does have some hits and does do decent damage, but more than likely you're going to want to cancel 3 into either 6 or 5 or 6, and then follow it up with 5 after the lights start flying back and forth. Keep in mind that 5 has nothing. There's no defensive buffs on 5 in terms of invincibility or immunity or guard hit. There is only the heal. I mean, the heal is really good, and the what do you call it? The frenzy buff is really good. Like, it's got good buffs, but it doesn't have any defensive buffs. And 5 takes some time to ramp up, so you're gonna want to follow up 3 with 5. So generally speaking, I would say just cancel 3 into 5. You'll see when we get into some gameplay here. We got rank 4 on the type enhancement, which doesn't really matter right now. We've got Overdrive on the ISO 8 set, like I said, is sort of ideal. We have no artifact, but she does have an artifact available. And then we actually have a CTP of Rage. I actually skipped from the Obelisk all the way up to the Rage to show you guys some things. And then as far as the uniform goes, the optionals are Daredevil Fall from Grace, which is good, Namor Phoenix 5, which is okay, Venom Vision WandaVision, which is good, Doctor Strange Space, which is pretty good, and then Ghost Rider King of Hell. So she has good optionals for solid characters, and her build is outstanding. So how does that translate into game modes? Well, I did end up getting one of my highest scores yesterday in ABX, although I didn't feature that clear because I wanted to show you what she can do with an Obelisk. It's important to note that I was over 8 million with her, basically my first time playing her. So as I get better, she's going to get better. She's going to get closer to 8.5 million, maybe higher, which is as good, if not better, than any other female combat character. So you're going to hear a lot of good things about SIF because of the ABX stuff. And I do want to highlight that because that's important if you care about ABX. It's also important if you want to start caring about ABX, because rather than going the route that I've gone or other players have gone, building up Valkyrie, Crescent, and X-23, and She-Hulk, you can actually skip all 4 of those, and you can just go straight to SIF. Now, of course, Valkyrie is an amazing support as well, so you'd want to probably get Valkyrie, and Crescent's got a good leadership, and so does She-Hulk, but you kind of get what I'm saying. You can skip 3 out of 4 of those characters, and you can still do really, really well with just SIF and Valkyrie. So that is really important for that specific game mode. However, I do not think that you're going to be very impressed with SIF outside of ABX for most other PvE content. So I do want to put that out there, and I do want to make that sort of known. I'll give you guys a few examples here. We'll start with a really high example, stage 40. But basically, you'll see why she just cannot keep up with the meta, and why she's going to be known as a meta character for ABX, like Apocalypse, but that's basically going to be it. The only advantage that she also has is that she has a great leadership and she has a great support for PvE. That's always going to be the same. That value is always going to be there, and then you only would transcend her for that value if you need a leadership slash support. Like, she's a much better character to transcend than Elsa at this point, because she gives you a better leadership than Elsa. Elsa's not here, but she gives you a way better lead than Elsa, right? 5% more physical attack and 30% HP. She applies to combat types, whereas Elsa applies to all allies, but you can kind of make it work. But then she also has the support buff. However, as you'll see from this testing here, we're going to go ahead and give her basically the best possible team for stage 40. And we'll see what she can do here. And then I'm going to do a really quick comparison between her and Shang-Chi. It's not really going to take very long. We're not going to do like a full run here, but I just want to show you what to expect. So this is a triple support. Her own leadership, her own support, Wave's support. Wave has a CTP of Insight, and then White Fox's buffs. Now, she's not getting the full White Fox buffs, but she is getting the 10% chain hit, the 30% ignore dodge, which is really important, and the 10% increase attack. So we're a little bit late on the 5 to start. This kind of happens half the time with the run. But yeah, you're going to have a bit of a hard time proccing your rage, so you do want to spam 4 and 2. 2's really nice because it slams down like that. But she does get knocked back when you don't have 3 up. So you do want to have 3 up before you go into 5, because 5 is a long iframe with, like I said, no defensive skills. But as you can see, we're 30 seconds in, and she has not triggered the first phase. I'm no mathematician, but that is a really bad look. You can't even really tell how much damage her awakening is doing because it's not really doing much damage. Her 5 actually ends up doing almost as much, if not more. So we don't really need to go further than here. Spoiler alert, even with triple support, she cannot do stage 40 at all with a CTP of Rage. Now, yes, you might say, oh, but a CTP of Rage is not as good for World Boss Legend content. A CTP of Energy is going to be better. A CTP of a Mighty Destruction, perhaps. That's true. But if we're going to be comparing apples to apples, and if you're going to be using SIF for ABX, she needs a Rage for ABX. So you're basically going to take away her best value as a standalone DPS just to use her in World Boss Legend? Why would you do that? Just use a better character like Shang-Chi. And just for the sake of the comparison, because Shang-Chi does get the full buffs from White Fox, I'm actually going to take White Fox away and just give him generic Mystique. So I think Mystique's buffs are worth about the 30% ignore dodge, the 10% all attack, and the 10% chain hit. I think it's about even here. And we're going to go back in with basically the same team, except of course we can't use himself as a striker because he can't duplicate himself. He doesn't have that power. So again, we're not going to do a full clear here. I'm just showing you guys and explaining why if her best build is going to be a Rage for ABX, then you're not going to want to go with another build, then it just really doesn't make sense, right? So there in 15 seconds, less than 15 seconds, I think. I actually wasn't paying exact attention to the damage, but in about 15 seconds, we were able to do what SIF couldn't do in 30 seconds. So it's well over 100% more damage, and I'm using a worse team up. If I bring White Fox back, it goes even faster, right? So at this point in the game, at this point in your roster development, because we're getting closer and closer to that moment where all of the characters, all of the good characters and all of the good support characters are tier 3 or transcended, it's much more valuable now to identify the ones that also have the best abilities. So hero characters that can take advantage of Nick Fury and Coulson, but also heroes that can take advantage of the full White Fox buffs through leadership. And that's why before tier 3 was a thing, when tier 2 was the max, the best characters were still the characters that could take advantage of White Fox and the all defense down buffs, like Sharon Rogers, like Luna Snow, like Cable, etc., right? Those were all the leadership characters. So we're sort of seeing this again, and that is why characters like Sif just don't keep up. Not to mention the fact, I mean, she also has those are the reasons why she doesn't keep up. Her 6 skill just doesn't do any damage, right? It's just painfully obvious it doesn't do any damage. The best bet you can expect from your Sif as a standalone DPS, not as a support or leadership, is, in my opinion, stage 29 of Null. This is probably as good as it's going to get for her. And again, you're going to need to double up on the support. And in this case, I tested both of them out. I do think White Fox is better than Mystique. It's pretty close, so you may want to save White Fox for someone else. But the chain hit and the ignore dodge really helps, especially against Null, because unfortunately, Sif doesn't have any ignore dodge. That's sort of another thing that leads me to believe she's not that good for World Boss Legend and sort of the end game PvE content. At this point, end game PvE content requires those ignore dodge type buffs, at least one. So we're going to go ahead and lead into 5. 5 is really her bread and butter. Here it's really nice on stage 29. She can do almost 2 full bars of damage, but you really do need... There I would have gotten guard broken if I hadn't let up with 3 before I went into 5. You got to do 3 into 5 here. 3 does have hits, and I'll show you on the next rotation. We'll actually start 6 early. You can start 6 early. Because there aren't hits right away, so you can preset up your rotation. There's a couple of rotations you can do for SIF, but you can see it very much is freestyle. There is 3 with hits. The problem is that 3 and 5 have really long animations, so if you let them both play out, you won't be able to fit them both into a rage proc. It's just impossible. So we actually end up dodging both of the cages here, which is really nice. We're sort of behind on our procs, but that's okay. We're going to do 6, and then as soon as we see the lights flashing, we're going to do 3 into 5. This actually, I think, is potentially a better rotation for her if you can master it. It's a bit more annoying to do because you have to start 6 with like 1 second left on your rage proc or 0 seconds left. So you do need to know when it's coming really well. But otherwise, see, I would have gotten guard broken there if I hadn't done 3 before 5. But you also don't want to let 3 play out for the reasons that I explained. She's going to get hit here. Oh, she didn't get interrupted. I'm impressed. So if we hold on... No, I'm not going to hold on to the Awakening skill. It doesn't even do that much damage. Look, just the Awakening skill barely gets him out of his chair. So this is pretty much the best that you can expect from SIF as a standalone damage dealer. She's barely able to do stage 29. She's going to heal. She's tanky. You know, she's not that difficult to play, but she's going to be barely able to scrape by on 29. And that's with a triple support team, which in my opinion is unrealistic, right? You're not going to use this many supports for one run, right? You're trying to spread your supports out over your 5 runs. Let's say you're lucky and you have 7 supports. You're really going to use up 2 of them for 1 character, meaning that the other 4 runs, you only have 1 other extra to play with for flexibility's sake. So yeah, that really, I think, summarizes her value as a PvE character. She is now the best, or you know, asterisk, the best female combat in the game, which is huge. But that is really only helpful right now in ABX. It's not really helpful in any other game mode. It's not really meaningful in any other game mode because no other game mode has that restriction and still allows SIF to do a lot of damage and get you all of the rewards. You can get all of the rewards, like I showed you. I got 7 million almost with a proc. So you don't need a CTP investment to get all of the rewards in ABX on those days with her. That may or may not be worth the 1,000 crystals for you. Now let's investigate whether it's worth the 1,000 crystals to get her leadership / support buffs. So for this test, we're actually going to go to stage 25 of Mephisto, and I'm going to show you the team setup here. I'm using Black Dwarf as my main DPS, and I have to supplement him. I have to buff him with Hulkbuster's leadership and Taskmaster support. So Hulkbuster's giving him a 35 basic attack increase, and then he also has this extra 5%, so he's got 40% here from the team up bonus, and then Taskmaster's giving him the 45% increased damage to villains with some damage reduction, so he takes less damage. So what we're basically going to be testing is whether this team is going to be as fast, faster, or slower if I can sub out both of these characters and basically achieve both of their duties, both of their buffs with just SIF. Because if that's the case and that value is pretty high, that she can replace both of those characters for this specific type of content, because she's going to be giving him 35% physical attack, which is only 5% less, and she's also going to be giving him more HP, which means he heals more, which is kind of similar to the Taskmaster defensive buffs. And then she's also going to be giving him increased damage to boss types, which should be on par with Taskmaster's buff, or so I think. So let's get to testing. Okay, so this first run on this SIF feature video doesn't actually feature SIF, but that's okay. We're gonna nail our proc and our CTP of Insight activation. We're gonna do a whole bunch of damage here to Mephisto, even though we don't know how much damage. We did proc our next energy, but that's okay because the playstyle that we're going for is to skip a rotation in between, just to be as safe as possible and as accurate as possible for the damage. So there we go. I sort of figured that was going to happen. So that took 26 seconds, 1 full transcended rotation and 1 regular non-transcended rotation with the remainder of the transcended buffs expiring. That is how much it took to trigger phase 2 of Mephisto. Very, very fast with this Taskmaster Hulkbuster combo. Now let's see how the SIF combo matches up. So here we go with this SIF-led team. Can she buff enough to, oh, it might be more actually. I'm seeing hits in the millions each. So we didn't miss our proc. We did miss our insight proc, but that's fine. And there we go. 20 seconds. I actually can't remember if that's exactly the same, but it seems to be, it's maybe slightly slower because the insight proc was a little bit early, but yeah, that's crazy. So at a pretty high level, 25 of World Boss Legend, and again, my club setting doesn't go past stage 29. He actually doesn't really do, he does 25 with a bit of time left, so this is not like a stage that he normally flies through anyways. It's a little bit slower in the second phase, but SIF appears to be able to compensate basically, or combine the support buffs of Taskmaster and the regular leadership of someone like Hulkbuster. And actually, one small addendum, I did have to add in Thing to simulate, to like get the equalization for CTP of Insight, because Taskmaster has an Insight, and none of these other characters that I have on here do have an Insight equipped. So I actually added Thing, which does give back the 5% physical attack. So he's still getting 40% in total, which is basically identical. So this team is identical to this team, and Thing doesn't actually have to be there. He's just there for the insight. And SIF carries the weight of Hulkbuster and Taskmaster. Now, Taskmaster has some other value from the Black Widow Legendary battle, but in that case, I would say it's a very good high value purchase. So that's really where I'm going to leave it for SIF. Unfortunately, not going to be the main damage dealer, the workhorse of your team when it comes to content outside of ABX. In ABX, she's definitely the workhorse. She's the leadership, she's the support, and she's the DPS, and she cancels too. You don't have to switch. She cancels all 3 seasons. So in ABX, she's queen for her typing, right? For her combat female hero typing. But outside of that, she's reduced to just a leadership support role. But I would say that she's by far an above average and possibly a top 5 leadership support, because that increase, you know, it only applies to combat types, so it's a little bit more restrictive than a leadership like Elsa's. I was originally going to do the comparison with Makari, and then I realized that SIF wouldn't be giving Makari the 35% physical attack, so you do have to be a little bit more cautious. So, you know, review your roster, evaluate your roster, and see how many combat types SIF is actually going to buff. But yeah, she can do the job of 2 full characters in terms of their buffs. And that, especially for World Boss Legend, where you're trying to squeeze the absolute most value, is worth a heck of a lot, right? We've come a long way from tier 3 Cyclops for his leadership and that passive only for energy attackers, right? We've come a long way from that. And the nice thing too is the flexibility is it's combat heroes or combat villains, right? Because Obsidian is a villain. This effect applies to all allies. It will also apply, well, I'm actually not sure if it will apply. I was going to say it might apply to boss types in Danger Room Extreme. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to investigate that, but it might apply to Danger Room Extreme, adding additional support leadership buff value. So yeah, that's my review of SIF. Definitely a must buy if you are big into ABX, but you already probably knew that. Also possibly a must buy if you are in need of a combat lead or a generic support for World Boss Legend and other content like that. But if you're looking for a main DPS, you'll probably have to look elsewhere, like Shang-Chi, like Obsidian, if we're keeping it within the combat class. And if we're not, then there's a bunch of other options, Sharon Rogers, Makari, etc., that really, you know, really outpace SIF just in the female category, not including male types. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the SIF review. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you like SIF's face. That's not her face. That's her face. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.